Good morning, and welcome to the 8th Annual Ulster County Domestic Violence Information Forum. Today's forum is being presented by Ulster County Executive Pat Ryan and the Ulster County Interagency Council on Domestic Violence and Human Trafficking. My name is Mike Iaposi. I'm Commissioner of the Ulster County Department of Social Services, and I chair the council. This year's forum subject matter was arrived at in response to the COVID-19 pandemic that we've all been experiencing. And our council decided that it would be a wonderful opportunity to hear from a variety of county organizations that have had to make some adjustments in response to the COVID pandemic to ensure uninterrupted and comprehensive delivery of ongoing services with regard to the area of domestic violence. As a result of what we're all experiencing, this year's forum is being brought to you in a virtual platform. So it reflects the same kind of adjustments that many of our organizations and individuals are making to be able to continue to communicate, transact information, and keep informed. So we as a council are extremely pleased that we have been able to convene this forum and have been able to arrive at this subject matter, which is vitally important right now. To begin the forum, we're going to hear some welcoming remarks from some county officials. Dr. Alan Roberts, president of Ulster County Community College, which has traditionally hosted the event when we convened in person and who we're receiving technical support from this year, is going to open up with some remarks. We're also going to hear from Pat Ryan, our county executive, our district attorney, Dave Clegg, and our sheriff, Juan Figueroa. All of these individuals will share some insights and observations about what they've been experiencing and what their contributions are in connection with, again, making sure that we are providing domestic violence services in Ulster County. So we'll start off with our welcoming remarks, and then I will have some other introductory remarks to make with respect to the organizations that you'll be hearing from as well. So thank you again for joining us today, and we hope that this is going to be an informative and worthwhile forum. Thank you.
Hello. As the sixth president of SUNY Ulster, I am pleased to welcome you to the 8th Annual Domestic Violence Information Forum through our virtual platform. This virtual forum is made possible by Ulster County Executive Ryan and the Ulster County Interagency Council on Domestic Violence and Human Trafficking. The mission of the council fully resonates with SUNY Ulster as you raise the awareness, promote education, and achieve the prevention of domestic violence and trafficking in Ulster County. We are pleased to be a partner in your collaboration to break the cycle of violence, especially as we explore, respond, recover, and re-envision the evolution of the programs and services addressing domestic violence in Ulster County during the COVID-19 pandemic. On behalf of SUNY Ulster's Board of Trustees, faculty, staff, and students, thank you for joining us.
Hi everyone, this is County Executive Pat Ryan. I'm sorry that we can't all be together, but we are making it work through the wonders of Zoom. I'm glad to virtually be with you. I remember being with you all in person last year for this great event, and I'm hopeful that next year we'll be together again in person. Before I just welcome everyone to the session today, I just want to thank each of you personally and as members of this community for everything you've done across many fronts to get us through one of the most turbulent years in living memory. I'm really proud of how we rallied as a county and took care of each other. And I know much of the work of the council and the people that we serve are in an even greater point of challenge and risk and uncertainty right now due to COVID. So the work that you have done and that we'll be doing going forward is even more urgent and important. And so as we always do in this month of domestic violence awareness, to hold this event as really just a moment and a day to recognize what we've done since this group was started in 2009, how far we've come, and really the approach of a collective and a collaborative with so many partners in government, not-for-profit partners, thought leaders, and community leaders. As you all know, the only way to address a problem like this is really with a whole of community approach. And that's why I am so proud of what we've built here, what you all have built here in Ulster County with the council. So I'm looking forward to the event and the programming and hearing from great folks. But more than anything, I'm just thankful to each and every one of you for the work that you've been doing on this front. I'll just say that I think going into 2021, unfortunately, things are going to get harder and more difficult on almost every front. And so please, let's use that as an impetus to just work even more and know that I am here for anything that you need. And please don't be shy, as I know many of you are not, in asking for help and resources. This is where we're going to really have to step up, each of us. So on that note, enjoy the day and the conference, and I look forward to seeing each of you in person, hopefully soon.
Good morning. I'm Dave Clegg, the Ulster County District Attorney. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this important forum. I hope you are well and staying safe during the pandemic. This office has always made addressing domestic violence a priority, but since the pandemic, we've decided to double down on that priority. We already had in place the work of the FCAC and the IPVI program that was centered out of the city of Kingston. We decided that we're going to expand the IPVI program because of the success that it's had, and we're going to start with the town of Saugerties and with the leadership of Chief Sinagra that has already been placed in operation. We hope to move to the town of New Paltz soon, and then throughout the county. Throughout the pandemic, the ADAs and investigators at my office have continued to support the victims of domestic violence and address the offenders. They did it virtually with social distancing, but were tireless in their effort to still support the victims and address this terrible scourge. So I look forward to working with all of the partners who are here at this forum. Together, we can work in a way that will reduce domestic violence in our county, and shoulder to shoulder, we can get this done. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the 2020 Domestic Violence Forum. This is some entrance to a new decade. Pandemic, opioid epidemic, anti-law enforcement rhetoric, budgetary constraints. And that's just a microcosm of what goes on around here. Imagine in somebody's home when someone isn't working, when they don't have work. Domestic violence numbers have spiked this year due to these issues. The other interesting thing about domestic violence is that most people don't want to get involved. They don't want to pick up the phone and be involved in somebody else's problems. And most people that are victims of domestic violence don't want their family members or their loved ones to go to jail. They just want them to get help, and they want it to stop. There's a high percentage, I believe it's 35% of law enforcement calls to domestic violence that end up in a law enforcement officer getting hurt and injured. So domestic violence is a huge issue, not just for family members, but for law enforcement in general. And we need to do a better job identifying these individuals and talking with them and helping those that are abused. And it doesn't have to be a woman, it could be a man as well. So when you start your forum, just be mindful of all of that and the unique year that we're living in. This is Sheriff Juan Figueroa, Ulster County. Thank you.
Thank you for the welcoming remarks. Obviously, a lot of wisdom in those remarks from President Roberts, County Executive Ryan, District Attorney Clegg, and Sheriff Figueroa. I'm extremely appreciative that each of them took the time to address this issue personally in the way that they did, welcoming all of us to the forum and emphasizing the commitment that we have as a county. I know in my position as Commissioner of the Department of Social Services, I rely significantly on the collaboration and relationship and partnerships and support that we receive from all of those entities. and we wouldn't be able to be here this morning talking about this subject matter without those relationships. And I think also, again, in the unique circumstance we find ourselves, I want to recognize all of the interagency council members. I think we number about 30 agencies and or organizations that in some way, shape, or form are committed to providing services around domestic violence, and in a manner that's been very consistent with the leadership that we've seen from County Executive Ryan over the course of this challenging year. We basically never even considered not having the forum. That never entered any of our minds. It was more of a question of how are we going to do it? And I think that's a reflection of how under Pat, we've approached everything that the county is responsible for supporting the community in connection with. Not that we're not going to continue to do anything, but we're just going to come up with innovative ways to continue to do everything and do everything well. And again, I think that was reflected in all of the remarks that we heard from Al, Pat, Dave, and Juan. And I can't say enough about their ongoing commitments to this important subject matter. So I echo all of their remarks and look forward to the possibility that we'll be able to be reconvening in person, maybe at this event next year or other events in the near future. So now we're going to kick off the actual forum. And as was indicated, and I hope that you all received via email the agenda, we have service provider organizations in Ulster County that are each going to provide a narrative about how they've been experiencing the pandemic and how they've been continuing to be able to provide services. I would ask that during the presentations, if you arrive at having a question, that you submit your question via the chat, and we will have a Q&A at the end of the narratives. And if you have a specific question for a specific presenter based on their presentation or some other inquiry that you have, please try to indicate that so that we can direct the question during the Q&A. I would also remind anybody that's listening, if you are experiencing any kind of circumstance or situation, in the agenda materials is the 24-hour hotline that provides resources that are available. Outreach is an important dynamic of what we do on a constant basis. So if there's someone who's tuned in that needs to reach out, there are contact information in the agenda that you would have received. And I just, again, want to emphasize that traditionally our forum has been comprised of attendees from a lot of service providers, a lot of professionals, but we've also had people from the community tuning in. And that's always very encouraging in connection with disseminating important information about our services and doing outreach. So please do not hesitate to write down a question or an inquiry or an observation. We would appreciate that. So we're going to begin with a presentation from the Ulster County Crime Victims Assistance Program, which is supervised by Sharon Lyons. Sharon and her staff are going to share some information with you about their experience. Thank you.
Hi, it's Sharon Lyons, the supervisor of the Ulster County Crime Victims Assistance Program. Like many of the county offices, we began working remotely when COVID first surfaced in our community, but we never closed or stopped working. The first couple of weeks, things seemed to really go silent for us. The cases became less frequent, but they were more severe. This highlighted to us that we just weren't getting to people early enough. We started realizing this wasn't going to be a 2-week quarantine, but things weren't going to go back to normal anytime soon. We also saw quickly that COVID was really magnifying the struggles that victims of crime were dealing with. While we work with survivors of all violent crime, I'm just focusing on domestic violence for today. We all know that domestic violence thrives in secrecy, and we were scared for these survivors and we felt helpless. Many people assumed we were closed. We were unable to go into the hospitals or meet people there, and many survivors were afraid to even go to the hospitals with everything that was going on. We needed to adapt. Step one is always the same for our office. Figure out how to keep our office connecting and working as a team. Taking care of each other is what keeps us strong and keeps us working effectively. We started brainstorming ideas to let people know that we're still here. The logical first places to start were pharmacies and food distribution centers, since these were the only places that were open. We asked them to partner with us, to be a lifeline to these individuals by being that point of contact. We gave the pharmacies concrete suggestions on how they could help. Recently, OPDV is using many of our ideas and our materials to promote this initiative on a state level to the pharmacies. We started branching out to other community resources such as libraries. Little by little, we started getting our cases back. We became hopeful when we saw the Office of Court Administration automatically extending OPs. We saw the governor's office develop a task force on domestic violence, with one resulting in a change to get rid of a requirement that DV survivors would not need a police report to access OVS funds and services, such as money to help them move out of dangerous situations. We were able to get both our survivors of sexual assault and our trauma-informed yoga program, among other activities, shifted to a more virtual format. You're going to hear a little more about that in a few minutes. We're now alternating staff between the office and working remotely. We're almost back to a normal volume of cases and now can go back into hospitals and allow survivors in our office with appropriate safety measures, at least as of the end of September. Just in case anyone still thinks that DV isn't happening that much in our community, I'd like to share our office's annual case count, which is 1,608 cases that we've worked on this year. 874 of those cases are domestic violence cases. While we're adapting to conditions as they change, what remains the same is our compassionate and well-trained staff that provide support to these survivors. Some of these staff are here today to let you know what kinds of support are available. So take it away, Amy.
Thanks, Sharon. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Westberg, she, her pronouns. I serve the community of SUNY New Paltz and SUNY Ulster. And coming into this year, we decided to place our full attention into providing care. We are now offering all of our services virtually. This includes our student-to-student peer support groups, trauma-informed yoga, and relationship building workshops. And in these workshops, we are covering the mind-body connection, healthy relationships, grounding self-care techniques to help bring our community together in this just really hard time. If you're interested or you want to collaborate, please feel free to reach out. And with that, off to you, Jackie.
I am a counselor and educator for the Crime Victims Assistance Program. I raise awareness and provide education to the community and to professionals around human trafficking of both adults and children. Prevention workshops for youth focus on healthy relationships, cyber safety, and human trafficking. And due to increased online activity during COVID, I recently began facilitating cyber safety 101 workshops for parents.
Hola, Zaida Valderrama, consejera. Durante la pandemia hemos mantenido la comunicación con la comunidad hispana, especialmente con las víctimas de violencia doméstica, ofreciendo apoyo e información en medio de tantas inseguridades a través de textos, llamadas telefónicas, de contactos virtuales, correo electrónico y ahora en persona de nuevo. Nuestra asociación con servicios legales del Valle de Hudson fue y sigue siendo un servicio gratis y beneficioso disponible para ayudar con órdenes de protección y comenzar procedimientos para la U-Visa, especialmente durante un tiempo que nuestra comunidad indocumentada no es elegible a muchos servicios. Tómalo, Sara.
Hi, I'm Sarah Kramer Harrison, she, her pronouns. You'll see me if you come to any of our community education programs, such as Ulster County Bystanders Against Sexual Assault. I coordinate our volunteer 24-hour hotline, which I like to call a support line. I also offer the preparatory training that prepares volunteers to be able to provide appropriate support through this program. We're offering this in an online format this time. It's the first time and it's really exciting. If you're looking for a way to give back and support survivors, give me a call and we can connect. All right, off to you, Darlene.
Right. Thank you, Sarah. I'm Darlene Higley, Senior Crime Victims Counselor. Despite the challenges of this unprecedented time, counselors and trained volunteers continue to provide services to survivors of domestic violence. We offer crisis counseling, safety planning, and referrals to needed services by phone, email, and in person. This may include helping a survivor access the safety of a domestic violence shelter. We are also accompanying victims to hospitals, police departments, courts, and meetings with district attorneys. Some meetings are done virtually. Counselors are doing outreach and offering services on all cases referred by the Kingston and Saugerties Police Departments through the Intimate Partner Violence Intervention, also known as IPVI. Staff refers survivors to Legal Services of the Hudson Valley and Family of Woodstock Domestic Violence Services for assistance with obtaining orders of protection in family court. Additionally, counselors are assisting survivors with applying for New York State Office of Victim Services funding. Our services can be accessed by calling our 24-hour hotline at 340-3442 or by coming into our office at 1 Pearl Street in Kingston. Sharon, back to you.
Thanks, Darlene. You'll notice Jackie's no longer on our shared screen because in the middle of filming, she got called to the Saugerties Police Department. To end on a positive note, we're very encouraged and grateful to be in a community of such caring individuals, and we work with many of you on a regular basis. Many of those partners are here today presenting in this forum, and we thank you. Please stay well, everybody.
Thank you, Sharon, and Amy and Jackie and Zeta and Darlene and Sarah. We really appreciate you sharing your experience so far and some insights into how you've been able to continue to provide services. I think it's also interesting that you'll probably hear during the presentations that some of the programs, for instance, IPVI, that is a program that has its origins in the district attorney's office, as Dave Clegg mentioned in his welcoming remarks, and is now being expanded into other communities in the county, and also has the support and assistance of other departments like probation and crime victims assistance programs. So I think it's a great example of the collaboration that takes place as we implement and expand programs that we're getting great outcomes on. So thank you very much for that. And again, just a reminder to all of you that if you have any questions for CVAP, please send those in. And we will have Sharon joining us at the end of the narratives as part of a Q&A panel. Our next presentation is going to be by Legal Services of the Hudson Valley. And we're going to have Angela Figarelli, who is a supervising attorney there. And she is going to share what their experiences have been thus far.
Hello, I'm Angela Figarelli, and I'm a supervising attorney at Legal Services of the Hudson Valley, working out of our Ulster County office. Legal Services has offices in Westchester, Putnam, Rockland, Orange, Dutchess, Sullivan, and Ulster counties. We are a nonprofit legal service agency providing free civil legal services throughout the Hudson Valley. Across our multiple counties, we work to protect individuals from domestic violence, defend seniors against abuse, serve veterans on the home front, support the rights of the disabled, ensure that LGBTQ+ individuals are free from discrimination, promote children's well-being, and keep families in their homes. Since the pandemic, we have expanded our practice areas to include assistance with COVID-19 related stimulus payments, employment law, and housing issues. We have also conducted a series of Know Your Rights trainings, many of which can be accessible on our website and YouTube channel. We continue to update and expand our services to accommodate client needs. Today, I'd like to talk to you about how our Ulster County office's Domestic Violence and Crime Victims Unit and our agency overall has been working to help domestic violence survivors during the COVID-19 crisis. Like many agencies across the country, legal services had to change the way we did things during the pandemic. In mid-March, many of the courts shut down and our office began working remotely. Our attorneys, however, continue to serve clients. The pandemic has highlighted the long-standing inequalities faced by low and moderate income families struggling to get by and created an even more dangerous situation for victims of domestic violence. With increases in unemployment and external stressors comes increases in family instability and instances of abuse. Consequently, the number of cases handled by our Ulster DV and Crime Victims Unit has also increased. Much of the domestic violence work we do is in family court, as well as in the immigration system. Although family court filings were limited at the start of the pandemic, we continue to assist clients with emergency custody and family offense petitions and work tirelessly with community partners to ensure that orders of protection and custody orders continue to be enforced. At the height of the pandemic, we provided advice on the effects of COVID-19 on existing custody and visitation orders, as we saw many abusers use this crisis to try and further exercise power and control over survivors. We have also continued to file Asylum and Violence Against Women Act-based petitions with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. For those victims of domestic violence who are still living at home with their abusers, our staff would accommodate our schedules to permit safe communication with victims and would work with victims to plan their safe exit from abusive homes. Sometimes this would include filing for an emergency order of protection, an emergency custody order, and enlisting assistance of other agencies, as well as assisting clients with housing counseling and financial assistance through our Solutions to End Homelessness program, so that they could have a new home safe from abuse for themselves and for their children. As the courts have slowly reopened, so have our offices. As of July 6th, we returned to the office in a hybrid fashion, keeping half of our staff in the office and half working remotely. We are also able to meet with clients in person by appointment when necessary. Our attorneys continue to provide representation to clients in custody matters, filing family offense petitions and requesting orders of protection. We provide representation in child and spousal support matters now that the family court is accepting those petitions, and continued representation in already pending divorce matters. We have been appearing both virtually through Skype and soon to be through Teams, as well as in person for court. The family court has been scheduling trials, and our staff has already conducted a few trials both virtually and in person. In partnership with Crime Victims Assistance Program, we are also working on providing survivors of domestic violence with targeted virtual trainings and information sessions about their rights. When it comes to the cases we handle and the clients we serve, we are fully operational. If you'd like more information about the ways we can help, please visit us on our website at www.lshv.org or call us directly at 1-877-574-8529. You can also visit our office at 550 Erin Court in Kingston, New York. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And again, I want to do this with respect to all of the narratives we're listening to from all of the organizations. It's just so appreciative of the tremendous work that Legal Services of the Hudson Valley does here in Ulster County. At the beginning of her remarks, Angela indicated that they're in the Hudson Valley region and have activity in offices in other counties. And we're so fortunate that they have a presence here in Ulster County working in all the subject matter areas that Angela talked about. Also interesting that a fairly common theme throughout the narratives is going to be that all of these agencies as essential services remained open during the pandemic and came up with innovative ways to continue to provide their services. And to the degree that some of the other entities that we interact with ended up closing for periods of time, we all still were working diligently to arrive at, again, creative solutions to be able to resume our work. And even more importantly, to continue the relationships with the clients that we have, so that we were here to be able to respond to inquiries and talk to people about what their expectations could be. So I know that's been a really vital dynamic for all of us, and I think it was expressed in Angela's remarks. The next agency that we're going to hear from is Family of Woodstock. We have Emily Trotter Bodie, who is the Program Director of Non-Residential Domestic Violence Services, who is going to talk about how Family of Woodstock has dealt with the pandemic and continue to provide the services that they do in our community in response to domestic violence.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Emily Trotter Bodie, and this is Karen Storch from Family Domestic Violence Services and the Washbourne House Residential Shelter. And we're here to tell you about our programs and services since COVID. I have my 500 wipes, disinfecting wipes here. And we have lots of hand sanitizer because we have them everywhere. We're going to take off our masks so you can hear us better. And we're going to tell you a little bit about each of our programs in the past few months. So the first thing that we're going to tell you is about the delivery of service in each of the different parts of our program. Karen, you want to talk about the shelter?
Sure. So what we know about COVID is that it has actually increased the domestic violence that's happening in the community and I think nationally. People are shut inside, they're stressed out, and all of the difficult things that can happen in a house are happening. Unfortunately for us residentially, because of the contagious nature of the illness, our licensors have asked us to limit how many people in a room and not have families share rooms and not have more than 2 singles in a room at the same time. So while the demand for residential shelter has increased, our ability to meet those needs has actually decreased. So we're housing people, we've stayed open the whole time, but we are not housing the same number of people as we used to.
Non-residentially, we have been operable and providing the majority of our services the whole time since the health crisis happened, but we've had to adjust how we provide those services in order to keep both clients and our staff safe. So we provide the majority of our services phone-based and have throughout the majority of this time. We do some things face-to-face when we need to, which we do safely, of course. And we had to really limit any group interactions. I know that was relevant for shelter as well. Mm-hmm. So we've been able to maintain all of our individual services the same, but we are doing them from different locations too. So some of our staff are working out of the office. Some of our staff work from home, particularly our staff that was co-located. And we have staff that do both. So for instance, I do both because I also have school-age children at home. It would have been probably more appropriate for me to do this in my pajamas with a messy bun and a kid doing their homework where Karen's sitting. But, you know, that would be a true, accurate assessment of how we provide services a lot of the time.
I probably should have said a little more about the services we're providing. So we have stayed open the whole time. So the shelter has run from March, the middle of March, I think, when this all started for us, until now. We have at different points limited the number of staff that are in the shelter at the same time. Obviously in March and April, we tried to have as few people like sort of sharing an office as possible. And even now we still have to follow all the new social distancing guidelines. Certainly everyone's wearing masks, all the residents wearing masks, all the staff are wearing masks. We do, you know, daily temperatures for staff and residents and are sort of all, almost want to say hyper vigilant about our health at this point. But I think I can say hyper vigilant about our health. We do the same individual work that we did before, but we are not doing any group activities. We've been asked by our licensor not to. Certainly we miss that. I feel like a real key part of shelter life was coming together as a community. And so it has been like a shift in how we work to not have that be a regular part of the shelter and how we work together with clients.
We are excited to begin to hopefully resume some of our non-residential group activities virtually, though we know that not all of our clients will be able to participate in that format safely. So it'll be a little different than group activities were before when we could do them in person. Otherwise, all of our activities are able to take place as they have been for the past few months. And though we miss doing them in person and our clients miss doing them in person, we've been able to get everything accomplished and help folks through. which leads us to talk a little bit about how our clients have been during this time.
You know, I think my experience has been that the clients have been really resilient. I think it's safe to say that the staff have actually experienced COVID as more stressful than at least our clients are reporting to us. So while it's certainly possible that they're as stressed as the staff is, that's not what they're saying. Part of that may be because there's considerably fewer clients in the house, and so people have more space. But if I were to guess, I would say that people that are already experiencing a high level of trauma in their life, there may be a certain point where you just can't get more vigilant, more stressed out. So I think, sadly, in some ways, our clients kind of were already there. And so now we have staff stressed out in a way that they hadn't been before, but clients, I think, largely resilient. And I'm not seeing a huge change in their stress level. Even though I've looked for it, I haven't experienced it the same way. I certainly see a large change in the staff stress level. And of course, ongoing concerns for them about the nature of the illness, fears about bringing illness home to their family or friends. And I guess a lot of people will spend a lot of time later researching why that is. But my experience of the clients has been that they've been largely resilient through this. I don't know how you feel about it, what your experience is.
So I would say that our experience has been similar in a lot of ways. I think the level of trauma and everyday stress that our clients maintain on a regular basis sort of made it that it couldn't rise any higher, essentially, once this hit. We did have during what I would consider the hard lockdown period of quarantining in the springtime, a lot of frustration from the non-residential clients we worked with what services were not available to them in the community, what things were closed, what they couldn't access, and navigating through that. And we did our best to always be aware of what resources were available, what was open, knowing schedules, and how to help them navigate those things was a big piece of the work we were doing during that time. We also found during that time that we needed to safety plan non-residentially in creative ways that we never expected to do, right? So our standard tips and tricks and advice that we often use during safety planning weren't relevant to quarantining and the community not being accessible in the way that it usually is to folks. So we really had to think outside the box more than we normally do. And my staff were incredibly creative and diligent in doing that. And I was incredibly proud of them. We spent a lot of time supporting and planning around that process as well during that. As we came out of that period, we saw, and we had expected, a significant rise in people then reaching out. So the DV that was transpiring during quarantine, once people were able to leave their homes a little, we saw them really reaching out for service. So our program had twice as many intakes during this period of time, the majority of which all took place between June and September. So once people started to come out of their house. So our staff have been incredibly busy welcoming in new folks who need our services, as well as maintaining all of the clients that they were already working with and had been working with through this time. So it's been really busy and a challenge to work with all of these new people who really experienced some intense situations during that period.
So, you know, our experience residentially, probably, I mean, it's a weird, sharp contrast.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the shelter, people that work at the shelter, certainly myself and all the staff, are used to working at a pretty fast-paced, busy, kind of adrenalized day-to-day, super busy. And with the restrictions that have been put on us by our licensors, we have considerably fewer clients. And so the pace has really slowed down here at the shelter to an unusually slow and strange pace. Some of that has been helpful, but I would say a lot of it has been like sort of eerie. And I think all of us are experiencing this sort of adjustment and then concern about when it's going to go back to the way it was before, if and when it's going to go back to the way it was before. It's a new world. And I don't know that, even though all of us always said we wanted it to be slower and to have more time, I feel like we didn't actually mean that we wanted it to be slower and to have more time.
No.
So, the shelter's here. We're doing the work we can. I'm really proud that we stayed open. I'm certainly proud that the staff continued to hang in there with us. I know, especially March, April, May, it was sort of a ghost town. There was really no one in the car going to work. I just remember driving to the shelter and thinking, am I the only person working? I feel like I am the only person working. And the staff was great about that. Everyone sort of came together and is pitching in. And so I think there's been like a real bonding with the staff in terms of working through this that many people probably experience that are working still.
Our staff really, although we weren't in the same place, and for the early parts of quarantine, we were working from home and separated, we worked really hard to stay connected, utilizing technology to stay connected and be supportive to one another as we worked with our clients. And I feel that we did that really successfully. We've carried a lot of that over into folks being back into the office and maintaining those connections with our team. And our staff worked through a ton of different personal challenges around COVID themselves and were truly committed to maintaining service to our clients. And I'm incredibly grateful to them for doing that. They have shown their own personal resilience through their stress and figuring out how to work in creative new ways that none of us ever expected, and doing that while reassuring our clients and helping them. We saw an increase in need for accessing our food pantry. We delivered those things to folks who couldn't get out at times during quarantines. We've spent a lot of time getting folks things that they needed when places weren't doing donations in the community like they normally did. My team has really worked very hard, and the residential team has as well. We always work in conjunction and staying as close as possible. There were a lot of times during this that we couldn't do that in the same ways, and that was really tough for all of us because we're used to working very connectedly. We've been getting through, and we hope you all have too.
It's worth repeating that everyone that works with family, and certainly everyone in domestic violence services, residentially and non-residentially, has worked really hard to continue to provide services to our clients, even when we had to find a new way to do that. And I'm proud to be part of it, even though it was not easy to come to work, and it still isn't always easy. There's still fear and concern about illness. I'd say overriding that is a larger sense of being glad to be connected to all the people that I work with.
I hope that next year we can be doing this in person like usual, and we hope everyone has an enjoyable rest of your Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Oh, and thanks to all our partners who I know are also continuing to work hard. We talk all the time. So keep up the good work. Stay healthy.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, it was really wonderful to hear from Emily and Karen. And as I watch these narratives with all of you, I just have so many reactions and observations that cross my mind, and specifically around something that Karen said, which is that it's been interesting to see how providers and our colleagues and coworkers and professionals have reacted to some of the challenges we're facing as a result of the COVID pandemic. And at the same time, being reminded of the strength and resiliency of our clients, who have often, suffered different degrees of trauma, but have also, in their own special, unique way, demonstrated their ability to very effectively cope with this pandemic, and in some circumstances even better than many of us, because of a sense of knowing what that impact can feel like. So I think the resiliency, that we've seen in many of the populations and families and individuals that we service has been extremely inspiring, and reminded us again about the potential and how necessary and important, continuing the relationships that we have, especially through a crisis like this. So I'm so encouraged to hear about the ongoing work that Family of Woodstock, with all of its domestic violence services, has been able to sustain, during the pandemic. And we've all been partners collaborating on this work for many years, some people for decades. So there is the commitment and passion there as well. I also just am reminded that in the agenda that was circulated to all of you, there is a resources section which sets forth telephone numbers and contact information for these organizations if there has to be outreach. So just keep that in mind if you need to reach out or need to pass the information along to someone else who might have to reach out. Our next presentation is going to be from the Ulster County District Attorney's Office. Elizabeth Colmoni Mills, who's Senior Assistant District Attorney at the Ulster County DA's office, is going to lead off remarks from the DA's office.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Colmoni Mills. I am the Chief Domestic Violence Prosecutor for the Ulster County District Attorney's Office and the Operational Director of the Intimate Partner Violence Intervention Task Force, or the IPVI Task Force as we call it. I have with me here today Investigator Bouffard. He is a District Attorney investigator who's assigned to the IPVI Task Force, and our Project Manager, Cassandra Seifert. Intimate partner violence, as we know, is a pervasive, systematic problem that impacts all communities across the country. The way that it has traditionally been addressed by the criminal justice system has proven to not be nearly effective enough. In 2016, we saw the devastating impacts of this violence in our community and knew something needed to shift. In 2017, we decided to take a different approach. I'm very pleased to be here today with Cassandra and Investigator Bouffard to talk to you about the Intimate Partner Violence Intervention Task Force and how we adapted during COVID-19. Through a partnership with prosecutors, law enforcement, victim advocates, social service providers, and community members, the IPVI Task Force intervenes early on with intimate partner violence offenders known to the criminal justice system. IPVI aims to prevent further reoffending by clearly communicating the risks intimate partner violence offenders face if they choose to reoffend. And when necessary, we address the most dangerous individuals in our community through enforcement actions. The Ulster County Intimate Partner Violence Intervention Task Force is comprised of dedicated members from the Ulster County District Attorney's Office, the Kingston Police Department, the Saugerties Police Department, the Ulster County Probation Department, Crime Victims Assistance Program, the New York State Department of Community Corrections, Family of Woodstock, Ulster County service providers, and local community members of the Kingston and Saugerties communities. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw an increase in chronic offenders reoffending with heightened violence. In response, we expedited the timeline of our county-wide expansion to support the needs of our community. We have already been able to see IPVI's impact in the enhanced communication and collaboration we have seen amongst our partner agencies in the city of Kingston. And as part of the community-wide collaboration, we have recently implemented in the town of Saugerties. This has enabled the task force to respond faster and more effectively than ever before. And because we had already established an infrastructure when COVID-19 hit, we were able to transition seamlessly to the needs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The clearest indicator of our enhanced communication and collaboration was how easily the task force adapted to the rapid changes Ulster County experienced. The members of our task force collectively adapted, implemented innovative responses to offender accountability and victim support, and continue to be committed to the principles of the intervention. Intimate partner violence intervention offenders are classified D through A. A D-level offender is classified where law enforcement responds to an incident of intimate partner violence and there is not an arrest, but rather they file a domestic incident report. D-level offenders are given verbal and written notifications within 24 hours of that report by a member of law enforcement, a patrol officer from the city of Kingston or a patrol officer from the town of Saugerties, respectively. When an offender commits an act of intimate partner violence, if it's their first charge of intimate partner violence, that offender is classified as a C-level offender. A sergeant from the police department or our investigator assigned to the IPVI task force provides a personalized notification to the offender. If that offender commits a subsequent act of intimate partner violence, that's now being their second charge of intimate partner violence, that offender is elevated to a B-level offender. B-level offenders are provided custom notifications by the chief of police, the district attorney, community members, and social service providers in a forum where they are brought in to the Restorative Justice Center and messaged to individually. During COVID-19, for B-level offenders, we had to adapt to this individual messaging. Previously, we messaged to offenders collectively, and due to COVID-19, we adapted and now message to them individually. And we do these enhanced custom notifications as soon as somebody has a mandating mechanism once they've become a B-level offender. Our A-level offenders are our most violent and chronic domestic violence offenders. Today, Investigator Bouffard and Cassandra are going to do a mock C-level notification, which we have had to adapt during COVID-19 to utilize virtual communication to perform these notifications. Investigator Bouffard and Cassandra, I'm going to turn it over to you now to do a mock custom notification.
Thank you, Liz. And I think it's also important to note to everyone who's watching that there also is a parallel victim notification that Crime Victims conducts to ensure the safety and well-being of the victim each time their offender is classified.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Seifert. My name is Investigator Stephen R. Bouffard. I'm with the Ulster County District Attorney's Office, assigned to a task force to reduce and hopefully stop intimate partner violence here in our community. I work in conjunction with the City of Kingston Police Department. I work for the prosecutor's office who's prosecuting your case. What brings me here today is because you've been arrested by the City of Kingston Police Department for a domestic violence offense. Whether or not these allegations are true, I'm here to send you a message. And that message is now that you're a C-level offender in our program, we are going to be watching everything that you do carefully on a daily basis. Our task force, which is the Intimate Partner Violence Intervention Task Force, the acronym is IPVI. We watch and we review each offender daily. And if you offend, whether it be in the domestic violence world or any criminal activity, we will hold you accountable. What my message to you is today is to help to keep you out of jail and trouble. I want you to change your behavior. And we have, through this program and this task force, we have services that are available to you. And I'm going to give you a letter today that some of those services are on there. And there are people and phone numbers that you can reach out to change your behavior. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I don't.
Great. Here's your letter.
Thank you.
I'll also give you my card. If there's anything that I can do to help you, if you run into any problems, you can call me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. At the end of the presentations, I will be available to answer questions that any of you may have regarding the Intimate Partner Violence Intervention Task Force. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz and Cassandra and Steve. Really appreciate that presentation. It was certainly interesting to hear about the IPVI program and see that role play in terms of how it's actually implemented. I think the origins around IPVI are that we get a sense in our respective communities about who offenders may be. And offender accountability and engaging offenders is a crucial dynamic in terms of addressing domestic violence in our community around prevention and also ensuring the safety going forward of survivors. So we're really appreciative to hear about that, to see a little bit about how it works. And as District Attorney Dave Clegg said in his opening remarks, it's also very encouraging to hear that it's going to be a program that is going to be getting expanded throughout Ulster County. So we really appreciate that. Thanks for those remarks. Our next presentation is going to be from Senior Investigator Jimmy McCoy at the Ulster County Family and Child Advocacy Center. The Child and Advocacy Center is a collaboration with the District Attorney's Office and the Department of Social Services, which essentially teams up Child Protective Services investigators with law enforcement investigators to work together side by side in connection with investigating cases of serious physical and sexual abuse where there could potentially be both criminal and family court proceedings. We also have crime advocates, therapists, physicians, coordinators, and it's a facility that has been in operation here in Ulster County going on 26 years. And it's something that we're extremely proud of, a collaboration of this nature. And Jimmy will share with you that in the midst of this COVID pandemic, we were successful in relocating the facility. And he's going to, in his remarks, provide some information about the new location and the work that continues to be done at the FCAC.
Good morning. My name is Jim McCoy. I'm a senior investigator with the Ulster County District Attorney's Office. I'm assigned here at the Ulster County Family and Child Advocacy Center as a law enforcement coordinator. Here at the center, we investigate crimes against children, domestic violence, and other family offenses. The center is directly supervised by the Ulster County Department of Social Services Commissioner, Mike Iaposi, along with the Ulster County District Attorney, David Clegg. The staff at the center also is comprised of the Chief Assistant District Attorney, Kathleen Van Loan, who I'll introduce to you a little later, Director of Services, CPS Supervisor with 4 CPS caseworkers, myself, 5 other law enforcement officers, 1 from the Saugerties Police Department, the Ulster County Sheriff's Department, the District Attorney's Office, the Village of Ellenville Police Department, and also the New York State Police. What I'd like to do first is today is provide you a brief overview of the center and updates at the center during COVID-19. First, we'd like to acknowledge our appreciation for the support that we've received from the County Exec's Office. During COVID-19, it became necessary for the center to relocate from 21 O'Neill Street here to 51 Hurley Avenue. During that time, it was a very difficult process, but all the county agencies put their best foot forward and were able to help us accomplish this, and it was a very difficult thing to do. So let's take a quick look through the CAC so we give you a brief overview of what it looks like. Here I'm standing in the lobby. When you come in during COVID-19, you'll see that we have seating outside of the center, which you would be introduced to. You would have received information from our staff as to how to enter the building. Our staff would meet you here in the lobby, and then we would proceed with our COVID-19 policies for entering the facility. So why don't we go inside and we'll take a quick look at what our center actually looks like. When you come into the center after your processing, you would be here in the waiting room where our staff would greet you, get you signed in. Normally we have other things out and about for children who come to the center. It's very minimalistic at this point so that we can keep the center sanitized. Once you're introduced into the center, we'll bring you back and show you what we're able to do here at the center. One of the rooms in the center is our examination room. We bring children for sexual assault exams here and other injuries that they may sustain during domestic violence incidents, so that our 2 pediatricians on staff can assess them and give us advice as to how to move forward in further treatment. Further down the hall, we have separate interview rooms, one which is utilized for non-offending parents, victims of domestic violence, teenagers who also witness domestic violence in their homes or or sex abuse. And you can see that our facility is also equipped with safety shields during COVID-19 at this time. The second room we have, or the third room we have here, is our child-friendly room. Again, equipped with a safety shield. We try to make it as comfortable as we possibly can for the children who come to see us because of some of the trauma they've been exposed to. And the last facility, part of the facility here, is our long-term, short-term trauma therapy room, where we have a trauma therapist on site, which will bring the children in and non-offending parents in and provide services for them. All those services, or all the services that are provided here at the Child Advocacy Center, are free. So what I'm going to do now that you've had a chance to take a look at the facility, I'm going to introduce you to some of our staff who are going to give you a better idea of what they've been going through during this time to continue to provide our services during COVID-19. I'll introduce you to a CPS caseworker, Ann Hotelling, and Ulster County Sheriff's Detective, Frank Gillespie.
Hello, everybody. How are you? My name is Frank Gillespie, and I'm the detective from the Ulster County Sheriff's Office, assigned here at the Child Advocacy Center. Next to me is my Ulster County CPS caseworker partner, Ann Hotelling. I've been fortunate enough to be assigned here since October of 2017, and as a senior told you, we work alongside investigators from different agencies. I also know that Senior Investigator McCoy went over the typical day-to-day operations of how the Advocacy Center would usually work, and how we try to speak with the victims of domestic violence and abuse, along with their families or children here at the Advocacy Center, so they are removed from where the abuse took place. We try to put them in a more relaxed or neutral environment so that they hopefully feel more safe and secure and will open up and talk with us more. We have done this for hundreds of domestic violence reports since I started here at the Advocacy Center alone. Unfortunately, though, since the onset of COVID-19, it has a great impact on how we do our normal day-to-day operations. Due to the restrictions set forth, we have not been able to conduct our interviews and or our investigations here at the Advocacy Center itself. However, we do not let that stop us from helping families with whatever they need. And I'm going to turn it over to Ann now to let her explain that a little better to you.
Hi, I'm Ann Hotelling. I'm a caseworker with Ulster County Child Protective Services. I'm assigned here to the Family and Child Advocacy Center. Like Frank said, we investigate, among other things, incidents of domestic violence involving children. The COVID-19 crisis has no doubt put stress and strain on families and has definitely affected the way we investigate. Lack of childcare, job loss, financial struggles, food insecurity, and mental and physical health concerns put families at risk of negative outcomes. Being responsive to the needs of parents and children while investigating poses a challenge, while also increasing risk and adding stressors. Despite the significant changes over the course of the last 7 months, we continue to receive calls and conduct investigations, but we have changed how those investigations are managed. Currently, we are only able to utilize the Family and Child Advocacy Center, which Investigator McCoy showed you earlier, on a very limited basis. Because of this, we have gotten creative in our pursuits to serve families where domestic violence is a concern. While we once relied heavily on in-person and face-to-face interactions, we have adapted to the current constraints and found alternative means to accomplish the same task while still abiding by social distancing guidelines. Thorough research, information gathering, and prioritizing enable us to make a proper judgment on an individual family's needs and help us decide how to conduct interviews. All Child Protective Service investigations still require at least one in-home contact, but interviews do not necessarily require in-person contact. In some instances, we have embraced virtual technology as a means of interviewing. We've utilized FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, Google Duo. The technology itself is not without its own set of challenges. Bad connections, dropped calls, lack of service, and limited access by some families has increased the time spent. Interviews that once took us an hour or so now take twice the amount of time and sometimes multiple encounters. Other times we are meeting with families in quiet public settings at a reasonable distance and with the appropriate personal protective equipment. The place for interviews is carefully chosen to account for the safety of everybody and privacy. Other interviews are done at local law enforcement agencies. Me and Frank spent a lot of time down in the town of Lloyd and Marlborough, and everybody has been super accommodating for us. Despite the challenges, we continue to work hard to ensure the needs of our children and families are met. We are making sure that families are safe and connected to the resources of our community partners when needed. While our work may look different, we have and will continue to adjust the way we conduct interviews, assess safety, and engage families while also trying to safeguard ourselves and our own families. Regardless of the current pandemic, if intervention is needed, we will be there, trying to make things better and brighter for families and helping them to achieve the best outcome for their future well-being. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I hope Frank and Ann were able to provide you with some useful information about how the CAC has been operating during COVID-19. Here with me as promised is Kathleen Van Loan, the Chief Assistant District Attorney in Ulster County. The only other thing I'd like to do before I turn it over to Ms. Van Loan is some other things that we do here at the Child Advocacy Center. Back in 1994, the Child Advocacy Center developed the Ulster County Domestic Incident Database. At that time, it was a standalone database that was only utilized by personnel here at the CAC. But we did catalog every incident of domestic violence in the county starting in 1994. Approximately 6 years ago, with some help from Elizabeth Camone, Assistant District Attorney also, we were able to enhance that program. And I hope you can see the screen behind me. This is a sample of a New York State domestic incident report. This enhancement allowed us to make the system go web-based. It allows prosecutors, every law enforcement agency in the county, the Department of Social Services, legal department, amongst others, including probation, to access this database to see each and every incident of domestic violence that occurs in the county. It also enhanced the use of the IPBI program, which I think you'll hear a little bit about later. So I just wanted to bring that up so that you would be aware of how we in Ulster County are able to monitor each and every incident of domestic violence and how it aids all of our law enforcement personnel that respond to them. And I'll just turn it over to Kathleen.
Good morning. On behalf of the District Attorney's Office, it's a pleasure to be here. We too have been facing the challenges of COVID-19 over the past several months. At the inception, we obviously had problems meeting with victims, as other departments have. We've met in parking lots, other outdoor spaces, and what used to be the grand jury room, but is no longer large enough to hold grand jury while social distancing. Courts began to open up virtually. So while some of us were working at home, we were able to work effectively, but not attend the virtual court appearances because many of us didn't have webcams on devices that had consistent cell service. So the District Attorney's Office has risen to that occasion. We now have laptops. Every ADA can work remotely, both in terms of being able to log into their desktop computer, as well as attending virtual court appearances from anywhere where there's cellular service. In addition to the virtual court appearances, our grand jury has now opened 1 day a week starting in July. It is now being held in a courtroom, the only room large enough in the county to hold a group of that size. Everyone is socially distanced, and we've had to set up electronics that the county already owned, including TVs and laptops, so that everyone in the room can see the witnesses. We are now also conducting sentencings where victims are appearing virtually. If they can't do it on their own devices, they can come to the District Attorney's Office and appear virtually from our office, so they can still remain being heard personally at the sentence rather than just submitting something in writing. As inconvenient as this is, we are rising to the challenges and hope we can continue to improve service. We know we are not at a place yet where jury trials have commenced, but hope that that will be coming soon.
Thank you very much. And if you need to contact the Child Advocacy Center again, the number is 845-334-5155. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. That was a tremendous presentation. It was just so interesting to get a behind the scenes look at what goes on at the center, the staffing, the investigations, the subject matter. And you're absolutely correct. It was a monumental effort to relocate the center in the midst of the COVID pandemic, and we owe a huge thanks to all of the county departments that stepped up to that challenge. Buildings and grounds, information services, finance, just to mention a few. we're really so grateful for all the effort that was expended to arrive at relocating the center while continuing to be able to have us provide services uninterrupted. And, I just also want to recognize, obviously, the work that Frank and Ann and Catherine are doing in their respective capacities. I thought it was very interesting to hear about all the safety measures that are being implemented over the course of this time and going forward. And again, I have to recognize our county executive, Pat Ryan, for his leadership and ensuring that we've reacted to this COVID pandemic in a way that has emphasized keeping staff safe, while at the same time protecting everyone in our community in terms of testing, contact tracing, and treatment where there have been positive cases. I think we've been able to keep those at a minimum among our workforce based on all of these measures that have been implemented around being safe. And again, I'm just so impressed and so encouraged to see the information that you provided with us. It was really wonderful. Our last presentation is going to be from the Chief of the Saugerties Police, Joe Sinagra. Joe has been a member of the council for as far back as I have been chairing it, and has been a supporter of all efforts around responding to addressing domestic violence, both in the Saugerties community and in the county. They're famous for their purple squad car. They are implementing domestic violence programs on a regular basis to expand their response and participation. So Joe certainly is a law enforcement leader in regards to doing everything that is available to keep everybody in the community safe. So this is Chief Sinagra from the Saugerties Police Department.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 8th Annual Ulster County Domestic Violence Forum, and how much different this 8th forum is from the previous 7. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we all can't be together in the same room, and that's the format that I'm used to working under. But times are different, and we've learned through this pandemic that we can adapt and that we can still move forward, and we can achieve our goals and successes in life, so I want you to keep that in mind. And I just want to talk to you a little bit this morning about how the pandemic has really had an effect here in Saugerties when it came to domestic violence, and some of the interesting anomalies that we experienced in the first part of the pandemic. When I take a look at numbers from 2019 compared to 2020, and I look at January, February, and March, I find that the first part of 2020, we had a 50% increase in domestic violence calls. And I should probably backtrack a little bit, and just so you understand, since 2012, we have seen a steady increase from year to year in the number of domestic violence incidences that we handle here in Saugerties. And we've started to take some pretty aggressive measures towards curtailing that trend and get it to go in the opposite direction and start to reduce the number of domestic incidences that individuals are getting involved in here in Saugerties. So again, going back to the chart, if we look at February of 2020 compared to 2019, we saw a 5.3% increase. So in just 1 month, we went from a 50% increase down to a 5.3% increase. And then the pandemic really kicked in. If you remember in March, about the second week of March, we had the major shutdown of all businesses here in New York State. And what we experienced from that is we saw a 27% decrease in the number of domestic violence incidences here in Saugerties. And April, the following month, that trend went down to 33% decrease in the number of domestic violence incidences. And then in April, we experienced a 60% decrease in the reporting of domestic violence. Now, we were here working, law enforcement, so every police agency was out working, and people were calling the police. I don't know what caused the anomaly. Things changed in June. I'll explain that in a minute. But I think maybe families started to focus a little bit more on the seriousness of the pandemic and started spending more time together because they were forced to. And I think part of that is the reason why we saw a decrease in domestic violence incidences. And there was a lot of concerns by families too about money. Usually that's something that drives issue between individuals, but I think in this case it brought families closer together and they worked together. But then things started to reopen towards the end of May. In June, we experienced, unfortunately, a 156% increase in the number of domestic incidents that we responded to. And that total number, we responded to 46 incidences of domestic violence in the month of June for 2020. And again, really how those anomalies occurred, I'm not sure. It's something that we're taking a closer look at. However, you heard me say previously that we had this trend of increasing domestic violence here in Sorgates. About a year and a half ago, we implemented lethality assessments as part of our domestic violence incident reporting. And that means that not only does the officer take a domestic incident report when we go to a person's house or street, wherever the issue may have occurred, the officer is also completing a lethality assessment. And that allows us to be able to predict, based on responses elicited from a victim, the likelihood of them being a high risk of danger if they are to continue into that relationship without getting some sort of help to make the situation better. And we are now offering, as part of that program, we would get the victim in immediate contact with crime victims. Didn't matter if it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock in the morning. We made immediate contact with our Ulster County crime victim advocates, put them in direct contact with the victim, and they started working immediately with the victim on resources that were available here in Ulster County that could help them and their family, along with getting them through the process of both family court and criminal court. August 1st of this year, we became the 3rd agency in the nation, the 2nd agency here in Ulster County, to participate in the IPVI program, the Intimate Partner Violence Intervention Program. And the first part of our program focused on the victim. The second part of our program now focuses on the offender. And we actually have 4 levels of offenders. We have A through D, with D being the least likely offender to reoffend, to the A offender, who's our recidivist, who is constantly reoffending. And along with that, we incorporate, with assistance obviously from our local criminal courts, Ulster County District Attorney's Office, we are able to induce sanctions to those individuals, and we're keeping a closer eye on those individuals. We're notifying them that they are now in our system as an IPVI offender, and our officers take this very seriously. And when we encounter these individuals, we spend a little bit more time with them examining what they're doing and who they're with. And in some cases, unfortunately, we find that these offenders are back with the victims who have a criminal order of protection against them. And at that point, in the past, officers would just say, well, you chose to be with them even though it was an order of protection. And that's not how it works anymore. Now, the offender is arrested immediately on the spot and brought before the court, and they're charged with a felony for criminal contempt of the court order. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of time here this morning to really expand upon how this program works, but if you're interested in it, I encourage you to give myself a call here at the Sorgates Police Department at 246-9800. I can explain a little bit more about the program and the benefits of the program. You can also contact our Ulster County District Attorney's Office. That program is overseen directly by their office. I want to thank everybody for the time and opportunity to present here before you this morning. And again, please be safe out there and don't hesitate to call us if you should ever need our assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Again, very interesting to get a behind the scenes look at how the Sorgates Police Department has geared up and responded to the new landscape that we're all operating in. And very encouraged to see all the effort that's being expended in connection with the implementation of several unique programs, the lethality assessment, IPVI, just to mention a few. And to the degree that, it's difficult to nail down information and trends around domestic violence. I think, obviously in this pandemic, that's become even more challenging, but even pre-pandemic, many of us understand that gathering data that's accurate around domestic violence is always going to be challenging because so much of it may end up going unreported. And then in the midst of a pandemic, that becomes even more difficult to sometimes be able to understand or get accurate feedback around. But to the degree that, we've certainly been concerned about what is going on in terms of reporting, that's been something that we want to watch as closely as possible. So we're now at the point of our program where we're going to be available for a Q&A. And my understanding is that we're going to have Sharon Lyons from Crime Victims Assistance Program, Angela Figurelli, Legal Services of the Hudson Valley, Emily Trotter-Bodie, a family of Woodstock, Elizabeth Colmoni Mills from the District Attorney's Office, Jimmy McCoy at the Family and Child Advocacy Center, and Chief Joe Sinagra available for some Q&A. Over the course of the presentation, we invited participants to submit questions that they might have. And I know that one question that was submitted, and I think potentially answered in the chat, but I will hand off to Emily if she's available, was around whether or not DV assistance can be available for violence outside the home. And the specific scenario had to do about whether a family might be being affected by violence from other directions that's affecting their well-being, where they feel threatened, and what types of supports are available. So Emily, if you're available to respond to that, or Sharon, I saw your hand go up. If you want to jump in, please feel free to do that.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So I did answer quickly in the chat. I just wanted to be sure to say that although the question that was posed would not qualify for domestic violence sheltering necessarily, it is certainly something similar to what we all work with on a regular basis, and we would be able to safety plan around. It's something that we're all familiar with and interact with. And the safety planning techniques would be similar to what we handle with DV.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Appreciate that response. I know, Sharon, I saw your hand pop up if you wanted to share your reaction to that as well.
It's, of course, depending on some of the details of the case, but through our office, not through maybe what we do with domestic violence, there are other services we could provide to help in those situations. I can think of two examples in the last year. One being a victim who had been shot, and because she was a witness for the district attorney's office, we were able to work together with the DA's office to get her some NIPT funds to get the family relocated out of the county because she was cooperating with prosecution, and then able to use some crime victim funds to help with getting her set up in a new location. In another different kind of situation, they didn't quite qualify for that, but we were able to work with social services, and they had RUPCO, and work with RUPCO, so we were able to get them into a hotel and through social services immediately, and then working together with RUPCO, find them housing out of the area they were in where they were being threatened by a lot of gang members. So it really depends on the situation. So they should call us and run their situation by us. And I'm sure there's something we can help them figure out.
Great, thank you, Sharon. I'm also really relieved that somehow my screen arrived at a place where I can see all of the panelists. So it's nice to see all of you, my colleagues and friends, and I'm so appreciative again for the effort you expended in preparing those narratives. They were really insightful, really interesting, really reassuring. I hope that the people that have been participating in the forum are reacting positively from hearing from all of you, seeing what you've been doing, seeing how you've been able to be doing the things that are important and necessary. So similarly to what we sort of experience at the live events, there's not a long list of questions that I'm seeing on the chat portion of my screen. So I guess, with the couple of minutes, we're essentially right on time here. We're about a minute before 11 o'clock. but I think I would open it up to the panel if anybody had an additional observation or remark that they wanted to share based on what we've all just listened to. You know, I've had the opportunity to be reacting to each of the narratives and kind of connecting some of the dots that have been discussed in terms of experiences and response. So does anybody want to wave to me that they'd like to say something or add something a little bit more? Or am I just gonna try to choose one of you? I'm gonna ask Liz Colmoni to offer her insights into some of the things that she listened to, because the district attorney's office is so essentially connected to so many of the activities, particularly those that evolve to the point where there's investigation, and or prosecution. So just would like to hear your reactions, Liz.
I first have to turn my mic off, which by this point I should know already. Thank you, because I wanted to thank each and every service provider, law enforcement member, everyone who's on the Domestic Violence Council for their dedication to this issue. And it was remarkable to see during COVID-19 how everyone really came together and utilized virtual conferencing and adapted to what we were faced with so that we can continue to provide services to the community, that the DA's office can continue to hold offenders accountable. And so what I'm walking away from today with is just, I am in awe of my colleagues and with the community for their response during this time.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, I have to echo those remarks. Even though I saw each of the narratives when they were forwarded for compilation purposes, to see this presentation in its entirety, really demonstrates in a compelling way what's been able to be accomplished. I do notice a question came in, and it's going to be for Family of Woodstock, Emily. Again, if you want to unmute yourself. It was somebody wondering how family has housed extra people since they had less room available during the shelter.
Sure. So we have continually had requests for sheltering throughout this period of time, as we always do. The process is the same as it regularly is. Folks who are in need of shelter are screened, and the overflow of need, which there has been, is referred to additional shelters that may have space at the time. It varies based on who has room fitting the demographic of the family or single that is in need. And we regularly check all of the surrounding areas on a daily basis for occupancy space. So we try to be as informed as possible every day of who has room. Granted, that changes on a moment to moment basis, but we keep as informed as possible. Our hotline holds that information as well as our shelter, so that we can always try to inform somebody seeking shelter of that information.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have another question that came in, which I'll probably direct to Sharon to start off with, but then obviously I think all of you, particularly possibly Joe and Socrates and Angela at Legal Services, might have some insights. The question is basically, are any of these agencies using additional tips or techniques to reach victims in underprivileged communities that may normally have underreported incidents of DV? And has the attachment to that question is, has there been an increase with the important push for social justice that we're seeing around all of the activity that's unfolding in our country over the course of the last several months in connection with institutional reform, obviously that is related to that?
I would say that's a really large goal of mine right now, is to really improve services to survivors on a cultural basis in the most survivor-centered way that we can. We've definitely seen an increase in Spanish-speaking individuals, not reporting crimes, coming in needing assistance. We don't have a lot of direct tips or techniques. It's pretty hard to get people when the offender's in the home with them. We have been using one phone we have for texting to try to get people. We do utilize email when we can, when the victim tells us it's safe, and only if the victim tells us that it's safe to do that. We just actually in the last 2 months have hired a second Spanish-speaking counselor here. And we are really targeting that community because we're seeing such a huge amount of cases come in. We really find our best marketing is word of mouth in that community more than any events that we do. Once people know that we're here and that we have people that are able to speak to them in their language, we're just getting more and more cases coming in. Now people are also learning of our collaboration with legal services at the Hudson Valley, where we've been able to help a lot of people apply for U visas, and a lot of people that were unaware that they could apply for citizenship due to these crimes that have been committed against them. So that's really helped people coming forward more and seeing some of the help that we've been able to offer. But it's a very large goal of mine to start providing more services that are a little more culturally appropriate. And in fact, we're looking to start DV groups here also, in addition to our sexual assault groups at Crime Victims. And we're looking in the next couple of months to start those groups in Spanish as well.
Thank you, Sharon. Angela, would you want to offer some reaction and response?
Yeah, absolutely. So our office does partner quite a lot with Crime Victims Assistance Program. We get a lot of our clients from them, but we have, prior to COVID-19, we made an effort to try to get clients from underrepresented communities by participating in a lot of different community organizations and events, like going to People's Places Food Pantry, being participants in Mano y Mano and the Ulster County Immigrant Defense Network. And now with COVID, that has changed in a lot of ways, but we still use those community networks to send out email blasts, to reach out to the agencies that individuals might be working with that are not your typical county agencies per se, different groups, places where they might be going to get food, organizations, charity events, and we try to make sure that they're aware of us and sending out email blasts through their networks. We have been posting a number of Know Your Rights trainings and advertising them through the same, both our like Ulster County and community organization channels, as well as former client lists, and just trying to use technology the best we can to really reach out to members in the community so they know what's going on, and also reaching out to local courts so that way they know what we're doing, that we're still open, meeting with clients, all of that.
Okay, great. Joe, would you like to offer some remarks about that issue in Saugerties and what you're seeing and experiencing?
Sure, Commissioner. You can hear me okay, right?
Yes, loud and clear. Thanks, Joe.
So, unlike most industries, when the pandemic struck, really for first responders, nothing changed for us other than the fact that we wear a mask when we go out. So we've been diligently pressing forward with our domestic violence programs here in Saugerties. We go out, we meet with the public, and individuals that find themselves in these circumstances, we spend a little bit more time with now, particularly since we started the IPV program, on making sure that services are put in place for them. And I can't take, I don't want to take anything away from the other services here, because they are just as extremely as important as we are. Because once we kick that ball off and running, we have to make sure that individuals are receiving the care that they need, that they're getting into counseling if that's required. I can't say enough about Ulster County crime victims. They're there and they're not there just for the victims, but they can also help the defendants or the offenders in a lot of cases because they need help too. You know, domestic violence is kind of like the pandemic. It doesn't discriminate. It affects everybody, and at every level of society, we are affected by domestic violence. So it's really important that these other assets that we have made available to us, such as through the Ulster County Crime Victims Assistance Program, such as through Cassandra Safar with the IPV program, such as social services, everybody worked together throughout this pandemic. So I didn't really see where we had to tweak or change the way we were doing business because we were out there in the communities. And so are these other organizations that I just named. I think what really is important about it is that now that we've started to see an increase, which unfortunately continues to exceed what I thought the percentages would be come this time, it seems like we'll come back to normalcy. People are back to their old ways, and it's unfortunate. And so we're spending time with those individuals. The difference between this year and last year is now we're paying much more attention, obviously, to our offenders. We're trying to get them the help that they really need because, you know, you can help the victim all you want, but if we're not changing that behavior of that offender through these other processes, it becomes very cylindrical and domestic violence will continue. I hope one day we can completely eradicate it through our efforts. And I think we've got a good start here. If we just keep implementing programs such as IPV within our county, we're going to see a drastic change in the way that domestic violence is handled and the way people perceive it. So I think, you know, again, we didn't really have to do anything technology-wise to try to reach out to people because we're out there with boots on the ground every day, just as these other organizations and assets here in the county are. So we're out there working. So you may, you know, if you're quarantined in your home, understand we are there for you. We're available resources. You simply need to pick the phone up and call us.
Thank you, Joe. You know, I think, you know, making that point really clear to people is reassuring, you know, knowing that you're still out there, boots on the ground, accessible, available is very reassuring. One other question came in from one of the participants is any advice that we might have for future nurses that will be working in the local community. I guess I'll take a stab at that one and just say that, you know, if we didn't realize that before this, we know that healthcare providers are heroes and devoted and committed to keeping all of us safe. And going into any community where you might be providing healthcare services, obviously, over the course of this pandemic has involved added emphasis on taking a lot of precautions to make sure that people are kept safe and that each and every healthcare provider keeps him or herself safe as well. So we've been extremely appreciative, I know, in all the work that we respectively do when we engage with healthcare providers on every level. And, you know I always have had nothing but respect and regard. And, you know, for anybody that's coming into that field of work in our community, thank you for choosing that field of work, and we appreciate the efforts. So I think we have arrived at the point where I'm going to wind things down. Again, I want to express my appreciation to all of the agencies that provided narratives, all of the individuals who were available for the Q&A. You know, I found it extremely interesting and informative. And I'm fortunate enough to be doing this kind of work on a daily basis with all of you. And again, just inspiring, encouraging, reassuring. I do want to extend one more thanks to the administrative assistant here in my office, Beth LaValle, who has stepped up during the course of all of the time that has elapsed to really be organizing this effort in terms of making sure that everybody was being communicated with and that the initiative that we set out to accomplish in connection with this virtual forum was able to be accomplished. Again, to Linda Farina and Dana Umbel at the college, thank you Thank you to our community leaders, President Roberts at the college, Sheriff Figueroa, District Attorney Dave Clegg, and Pat Ryan, our county executive. I think this really reflects in a way a wonderful example of, notwithstanding this unexpected and unprecedented pandemic, the commitment that we have to continuing to do the important work that we're all responsible for. I'm not going to make any predictions about what things might look like next year, other than to say we will have a forum. If it's going to be virtual or if it's going to be something that we're able to convene in person remains to be seen. And to everybody that participated, to everybody that registered and listened to what we were talking about, obviously stay safe, stay well. If there's anything that any of us can do, please reach out. You have the materials that have contact information for all of these agencies and all of the resources that are available. This is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but every month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and every day is Domestic Violence Awareness Day. And we need to remind ourselves of that and be really vigilant and diligent in our efforts. The last thing I want to mention is that we are the Interagency Council on Domestic Violence and Human Trafficking, and we will be convening our 3rd annual Human Trafficking Information Forum, which we expect will be on January 12th, 2021. We also expect it's going to be a virtual forum in a format similar to this. There will be information forthcoming that gets disseminated to everyone that registered for this event. And we look forward to convening that on January 12th. January is End Human Slavery and Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So the council is obviously committed to accomplishing that goal as well. So we'll look forward to hopefully having all of you join us for that event in January. Adults and little ones are all welcome. So little bit of background noise coming through. So again, it's a reflection of our new world. So thank you all so very much, and really appreciate this, and look forward to seeing you all doing this work. And again, stay safe and stay well. Thank you.